Aren't you being a little too extravagant using the heater when it's still warm out? People with their own parents shouldn't be allowed to use the heater in my house. Why do I have to hear such terrible things? The words of my mother-in-law, Kathy, felt like salt being rubbed into a wound from the loss of my parents. The outside temperature was 23 degrees Fahrenheit in February, and the condensation on the windows had frozen over. I was paying $1,500 in financial support each month, along with covering the utility bills, effectively covering most of the house's upkeep. I was also juggling my remote work and handling all the housework. Even so, did Kathy see me as someone shamelessly taking advantage of them? You should just leave already, ruining my son's life. I clenched my hands tightly on my lap. I tried desperately to hold back the rising tide of sadness. It had been my husband, Brian, who had suggested that we live with his mother, but now Brian wouldn't even answer my calls, siding completely with Kathy. It was early morning when Kathy unleashed her verbal tirade, and I was shivering, though whether from cold or from fear, I couldn't tell. It felt like my heart was about to freeze over as well. Was I no longer needed? Memories with Brian flashed through my mind like a slideshow. Our vows of love at our wedding, the joyful days of our honeymoon, and the countless stars we saw together. But now, he wouldn't even answer my calls. Did he no longer care about me? To be told to endure the cold alone without using the heater. My heart felt like it was freezing over too. Tears streamed down my cheeks. There was nothing left for me to lose now. The face reflected in the thermometer was, if anything, resolute. I was about to make a decision. At that moment, my name is Irene, a 28-year-old remote worker. I usually work for a major IT company based in Silicon Valley, managing system development projects from home. After losing my parents in an accident, I came to value family bonds more than anything. I married my husband Brian when I was 30. He's earnest, kind, and someone who can't ignore a person in need. We met at a workplace happy hour, and from the start, he was captivating. However, he had one significant issue: his mother. His mother is Kathy, a 67-year-old woman. She's been clinging to the past ever since her husband, Brian's father, divorced her and left. She coped with the loneliness by controlling her son, Brian. Brian had been taught since childhood that defying his parents, especially his mother, was wrong. He grew up fearing having his own opinions. After we got married, we bought a new condo. This condo was purchased mostly with the money I had saved. Soon after our married life began, Kathy came to our home unannounced. Not only that, but Brian's older sister Maggie also decided to move in. Maggie was a 32-year-old freelancer. Maggie had been spoiled by her mother since she was young and was given everything she wanted. Believing her mother's words that she didn't need to work, she grew into adulthood without facing reality. For her, enjoying luxury was a given. Isn't it great that Mom is here to keep the house running? That was a common phrase from Kathy and Maggie directed at me. In addition to the monthly utility bills, they demanded $1,500 for their living expenses. While we tried to be frugal, the two of them continued to indulge in extravagant meals and shopping sprees. Still, I told myself that I had to cooperate as a member of the family. Having lost my parents, I know the pain of loneliness better than anyone. That's why I had a strong desire to believe in the bonds of family. However, Kathy and Maggie never once showed any appreciation for that sentiment. Kathy saw me as nothing more than someone who had stolen her son. From the beginning, she showed no intention of hiding her animosity and constantly needled me with snide remarks. Every morning, Kathy and Maggie's cool glares pierced my heart. Still, I endured. A wife who doesn't fulfill her role is a disgrace to the family. Such remarks would stab at my heart, and I could only blame myself. Meanwhile, Brian was also suffering. If I defy Mom, that look comes back, he muttered, staring off into the distance. He said that since he was young, he'd been told that if he disobeyed, he'd be abandoned like his father. Those words still held him captive. When we were alone, Brian would say kind words to me. I'm sorry, I'll do something about my mom. I know he wasn't lying, but when he was in front of his mother, he couldn't say anything. Seeing him like that, I couldn't bring myself to say anything either. Kathy and Maggie's attitudes never changed. No matter how much I tried, they wouldn't do housework, didn't thank me, and treated me like a parasite. Still, I tried to believe in the bond of family. This house was the culmination of the hard work I did after losing my parents. Aiming for a promotion at work, I saved diligently and bought a new condo, but Kathy and Maggie just laughed, saying I got it thanks to my husband. My efforts didn't seem to mean anything to them. Someday, maybe true warmth will return to this house. With that hope, I endured each day. It had been a few years since I started living in this house, but I never felt like I was part of the family. Kathy and Maggie consistently looked down on me and treated me coldly. I kept telling myself that I wanted to build a bond as a family, but my efforts seemed in vain. The constant snide remarks from Kathy were emotionally draining. During breakfast, Kathy would sigh dramatically as she looked at the food I prepared. Well, I guess this is how young people do things these days. Less vegetables are bad for your health, you know. Maggie would chime in, laughing. That's right, Irene. You'll get sick like this. They would both give me looks of disapproval and amusedly exchange glances. I would silently add more vegetables to their plates. Maggie would then laugh again. See, she can't do anything unless we tell her. This kind of exchange repeated almost every morning. I often wished Brian would be there, but he always made some excuse to leave the table. I'm swamped in the mornings. Every time I heard that, I felt something inside me grow colder. Still, when we were alone, he was kind. I'm sorry. I'll do something about my mom. I'll talk to Maggie too. I heard those words many times, but the situation never seemed to change. Kathy and Maggie started to enter our bedroom without permission. My desk would be a mess, with documents scattered everywhere. I was stunned. I had just cleaned the room, but now there was no trace of that. I wanted to complain to Kathy, but I knew it would be useless. What? We're family, aren't we? I was sure she would just say something like that. Still, I couldn't just let it go. I went to Kathy and tried to muster up the courage to say, please don't enter our room. But Kathy just scoffed at my words, not taking me seriously. What are you talking about? You're living in this house too. We're just making sure you're not doing anything strange. Her voice made it sound like I was a little kid who needed to be watched. Maggie, who was sitting next to her, fiddling with her phone, added, That's right, Irene. We're doing this for your own good. Be grateful. I couldn't say anything back to them. That night I talked to Brian, but he just sighed, looking tired. I understand. I do. But I've been helpless against Mom since I was little. Ever since I was a kid, I was told that defying her was wrong. His words made it easy for me to imagine how much he had suffered, but still I wondered if I just had to keep enduring this. That thought tightened my chest. Kathy and Maggie's behavior escalated day by day. They would purposely drop trash as I was cleaning. As I picked up the trash, Maggie would mutter, Being a stay-at-home mom must be nice and easy. I'm so envious. Kathy would chime in, laughing. They treated me like a maid and ordered me around as if it were natural. The tea is lukewarm. This laundry is all wrinkled. Each time I would tell myself we're family, and I obeyed. But doubts kept growing in my heart. Is this really the form of a family? Can I truly become family with these people? I couldn't find the answer, and the days just kept passing by. One day I finally felt I had reached my limit and decided to take action. The constant intrusion of Kathy and Maggie into our room and the rummaging through my personal belongings had become a daily source of stress. I felt that if this continued, something major would happen. That thought pushed me to act. First, I decided to install security cameras. As I was setting up the cameras, Kathy came over, looking at me with curiosity. What are you doing? Why are you putting up something so ominous? She said with a hint of sarcasm in her smile. We're a family. There's no need for that, is there? I let out a small sigh at Kathy's remark. If you think there's no need, then please don't enter our room. I retorted, and Kathy looked slightly displeased, but spat out, Fine, do whatever you want, and left. I knew she wouldn't stay quiet after that. I expected her to involve Maggie and complain about something again, but with the cameras installed, I felt a little safer. Furthermore, I decided to consult the police, just in case. This is the situation I'm in. When I explained, the officer listened intently. At this point, there's no direct harm, so we can't take action, but it's a good decision to keep records. If something happens, contact us immediately. His words made me feel a little lighter. I wasn't wrong in what I was doing. That thought was a small comfort. One weekend morning, as I was making coffee as usual, Brian approached me from behind. Shall we go somewhere today? Let's take it easy for once. It was an unexpected proposal, and I almost doubted my ears. I turned around, and his expression was calm. Are you serious? Is that okay? Surprise and confusion mixed in my voice. We had both been putting off spending time together, using our busy schedules as an excuse. Still, I felt my heart leap at his words. I want to go, I replied, as innocently as a child. How long had I longed for this kind of time? Just having him suggest it made tears well up in my eyes. How about a nearby cafe? He suggested, and I nodded deeply. On our way to the cafe, I found myself more captivated by Brian's smiling profile in the driver's seat than by the scenery flowing past the car window. It's been a while, hasn't it? This kind of time. When I said that, he smiled a little bashfully. Yeah, it's nice to do this once in a while. His words made my heart ache. In our busy, everyday lives, we had somehow lost these small moments. We arrived at the cafe and sat down by the window. Brian quietly murmured, Thank you, always. Thank you? For what? I asked, and he smiled, looking a little troubled. For always putting up with so much. Those words made my chest tighten. I feel the same way. Thank you always. While returning the words, I felt my heart warm from his consideration. I remembered how much his clumsy yet kind words have saved me. Over warm drinks and the cafe's gentle ambiance, we enjoyed a light-hearted conversation, something we hadn't done in a long time. Hey, let's go on a trip next time, Brian suddenly suggested. Really? I'd love to. Maybe to a spa? My voice was filled with irrepressible joy, and I want to eat delicious food. I smiled naturally as I nodded at Brian's words. I wish this moment could last forever. Every time I saw Brian smile, the desire to believe in our family's bond welled up in my chest. After leaving the cafe, we continued planning our trip on the way home. A spa, local specialties, scenic tourist spots, the topics were endless, and smiles naturally came to our faces. I'm looking forward to it. I nodded deeply at Brian's words. The smiles we shared at the cafe and the words we exchanged seemed to have lit a small lamp in my heart. However, as we approached our house, that lamp began to flicker unsteadily. By the time we could see the entrance, the cold, sharp glares and snide remarks started to play in my mind. We're going back to our usual days. Thinking that made my steps grow heavier. When we entered the house as expected, Kathy and Maggie were sitting on the living room sofa. They were relaxing, watching TV. They glanced at us upon our return. Oh, you're late. Living it up, aren't you? As expected, it started again. Kathy's voice was dripping with undisguised sarcasm. With Kathy's remark, the joyful mood from earlier vanished instantly. I was pulled back into reality, reminded of the dinner preparations and the chore of managing their moods that awaited me. My heart sank, and I let out a sigh. I'm not a part of their family after all. The coldest day of winter, with temperatures dropping to 23 degrees Fahrenheit. The outside was freezing, but the inside of the house was comfortable thanks to the heater. I was working diligently at the computer in the warm living room. The deadline for an important project was fast approaching. This job was the culmination of all the hard work I had put in since losing my parents. I was determined to make it a success, no matter what. I was typing on the keyboard with all my might. Suddenly, the front door opened with a loud bang. I looked back, and then the living room door swung open with great force, letting in the cold outside air all at once. Kathy and Maggie entered the living room, stomping their way in from the frigid outdoors. Both were dressed in heavy winter clothing. They glared at me as they entered. It seems quite warm in here, doesn't it? Kathy's voice was cold as she adjusted the collar of her coat. Maggie, on the other hand, took off her gloves and let out an exaggerated laugh. That's right, Mom. Being a stay-at-home mom must be nice and easy, huh? To be able to sit around in a warm room like this, doing nothing but playing on the computer. The warmth of the living room seemed to rapidly cool with their arrival. I let out a deep sigh in my mind, trying to endure the growing cold and their attitudes. That's not true. I'm working from home. This is my job. I mustered all my strength to speak, but the two of them didn't even listen. Using the heater is just a waste, eating away at our finances. Kathy's glare intensified, and deep wrinkles formed between her brows. Her hand, clutching the remote control, trembled slightly. This should reduce the waste a bit. In that instant, the remaining warmth in the room was snatched away, and a quiet, cold air began to spread. It's cold, I muttered involuntarily, pulling on a thick cardigan that was nearby. But the cold didn't ease. Instead, it seemed to seep into my body, bit by bit. My hands and feet gradually became numb, making it difficult to move my fingers as I wished. I tried to type on the keyboard, but my fingers trembled, increasing my typos. I tried desperately to concentrate, glaring at the screen, but the cold seemed to take over all my senses. Kathy and Maggie exchanged glances, looking at me. Working in this thick coat? That's a bit over the top, isn't it? That's right, Mom. She could just endure a little cold. Kathy and Maggie's words pierced my heart as the cold enveloped my body. I had no choice but to endure the cold and their snide remarks. I won't lose. I won't be defeated, I told myself. That day I had a particularly important meeting scheduled, and it was a race against time. Kathy and Maggie walked around the living room as if it were their own, sighing dramatically and throwing sarcastic comments my way. I tried not to react to their words, remaining silent and continuing my work. I won't lose, I repeated in my heart over and over, but their words were gradually chipping away at my resolve. Even so, I kept my eyes glued to the computer screen. I just wanted to succeed at this job. That thought alone kept me going. Things took a turn for the worse afternoon. Kathy and Maggie moved to the kitchen and started making loud noises, clearly trying to disrupt my concentration. Not doing any housework and just playing on the computer all day. What is she thinking? Seriously, a normal wife would be more considerate of her mother-in-law in this situation. Their words reached my ears, but I tried to focus on my work, ignoring them as best as I could. Just ignore them. Once this is over, I'll be fine, I told myself, trying to keep my hands moving on the keyboard. But then Kathy suddenly turned around and spat out. A useless wife like you has no place in our family. At that moment, a sharp, heavy pain spread through my chest. I had endured so much until now, but those words, I just couldn't let them slide. It felt like something deeply embedded within me was being gouged out, and I almost choked back tears. By evening, the room had grown even colder, and I couldn't take it anymore. Tears started to fall. I'm at my limit. My body was freezing, and I had a headache, and I felt nauseous, but I desperately tried to finish the project, staring at the screen, barely able to see. I took a sip of lukewarm coffee, trying to calm myself down. Just a little more. I have to finish this part, no matter what, I muttered to myself, facing the keyboard. It was then I sensed Kathy's shadow approaching from behind. Suddenly, my computer screen went black. I was momentarily stunned, unable to comprehend what had happened. Now you can't focus, can you? Kathy said, casually tossing the power cord she held in her hand. An unbelievable scene unfolded before my eyes. The data for my important project might all be gone. No way. The words echoed repeatedly in my mind. I turned to look at Kathy. An indescribable feeling surged through my body and my chest grew hot. How could you do something like that? My voice trembled as I questioned her, but Kathy didn't flinch. She shrugged her shoulders. Why? I just did what I had to do. I was just being frugal. A wife should follow my lead. Her words pierced my chest sharply. How much I had endured, how much effort I had put in. They didn't understand any of it. This is my job. Why don't you understand that? Tears threatened to spill over, but I gritted my teeth, fighting back against frustration and anger. However, Kathy just let out a scornful laugh. Job? You call sitting in front of a computer all day a job? Don't make me laugh. You can only afford to indulge in your hobbies like that because we're supporting you, right? At that moment, something inside me snapped. I clenched my fists, trying to maintain my composure while suppressing the tremors throughout my body. Words welled up but got stuck in my throat. When I saw Kathy's sneering expression, everything became empty. Why is it so unfair? Why me? Anger and despair surged in my heart, but I had to suppress them. I had to find a way to change this situation. That night when Brian came home, I told him everything that had happened that day and asked for his help. Brian, please do something. I can't take it anymore. I'll really break down. But he just looked away, apologetic. I'm sorry, I'll talk to Mom, but I don't know what to do even if I talk to her. His words filled me with disappointment and anger. Brian, I've had enough. I can't take it anymore. My voice trembled and tears wouldn't stop flowing. How much do I have to endure? How much do I have to put up with? You said you'd be on my side, didn't you? The words I squeezed out were more earnest than I could have imagined. I tried. I believed I could become a family. I thought if I was with you, I could overcome anything, but why do I always have to fight alone? I stared at Brian, my eyes filled with tears, but also a hint of determination. Please protect me. I don't want to be alone anymore. He hung his head and answered. I've suffered too. I could never go against Mom since I was little. Hearing his words, I felt a deep sense of loneliness. The next morning, I had made up my mind. Kathy and Maggie were going on a 2-night, 3-day trip to a spa. In the living room, the two were excitedly preparing for their trip. A spa is the best, aren't they? They're good for the body and soul, Kathy said with a smile, checking the contents of her bag. Next to her, Maggie, fiddling with her smartphone, added, You're right, Mom. It's amazing that you can live such a luxurious life without working. I was in the kitchen, finishing up breakfast. Those words stung my ears. Without working. They were oblivious to the fact that their trip was funded by our support. Kathy noticed me and raised her voice as if on purpose. Oh, Irene, make sure to keep an eye on the house while we're gone, okay? Yes, enjoy your trip. As I replied, I was envisioning a different plan in my mind. Today's the day. I'll finish everything while they're gone. I went to the bank and processed the termination of payments. With this, it was finally over. I had made my decision. I felt a weight lift from my shoulders as I confirmed the cancellation of utility payments and financial assistance. I also cut off the monthly allowance of $1,500. The cold wind stung my cheeks as I walked to the bank, but my resolve remained unshaken. I won't let them control my life anymore. After that, I informed Brian of my plan. Brian, let's leave this house for now. I won't let them do whatever they want anymore. Huh? What do you mean? I poured out all the frustrations I had been holding back to my bewildered husband. I reached my limit. I don't have to put up with this in this house. Brian thought for a moment, then held my hand and nodded quietly. Okay, I don't want to waste your determination. We packed our things and left the house, heading to a nearby reasonably priced hotel to start preparing for our new life. The next day, around the time Kathy and Maggie were supposed to return from their trip, my phone started ringing incessantly. The caller ID showed Kathy's name. Here it comes. I answered the call, and immediately heard Kathy's furious voice on the other end. What's going on? We got home and the electricity and water are shut off. I stopped paying the utilities and canceled the financial support. I can't support you anymore. I replied calmly. What? Do you think you can get away with doing something so selfish? Behind her, I could hear Maggie's voice yelling, I can't believe this. Do something about it. Who's being selfish here? I'm done being your victim. I'm not your family. Am I just a convenient source of money? When I said that, the voice on the other end of the phone momentarily stopped, but Kathy quickly regained her composure and continued to scream. Ungrateful brat. My son's life is ruined because of a woman like you. You can say whatever you want about me, but please stop trying to control me. I'm not going to sacrifice myself for you anymore. Is our family just about money? Do I just exist to provide financial aid? I hung up the phone. After that, I received countless calls, but I ignored them all. With Brian, I moved into a new hotel room and had dinner. I let out a quiet sigh. Now, I can finally be free. After that, Brian and I formally requested their eviction. We also enlisted the help of the police, and eventually Kathy and Maggie left the house. Right before she left, Kathy was yelling, but her voice seemed hollow. Maggie also looked downcast silently. They disappeared into the cold wind. A few weeks later, we heard that Kathy had moved into a nursing home and Maggie was living alone in a cheap apartment. Both were far from the luxurious lifestyle they once had and were reportedly struggling. Meanwhile, our house was filled with a genuine sense of peace, something I hadn't felt in a long time. With Kathy and Maggie gone, our lives became incredibly comfortable. The living room was quiet, and the air felt lighter. I could finally take a deep breath while sitting on the sofa. This must be what peace feels like. Brian's expression softened, and he started to show more smiles when he came home from work. The change in him soothed my heart. One day, the doorbell rang incessantly. When I opened the door, I saw Maggie, looking desperate, glaring at me. Do you need something? I asked quietly, and she raised her voice. Need something? Of course I do. My life is a mess because of you. Maggie's face was flushed with anger, and her presence felt overwhelming. What do you mean? I responded as calmly as I could. It's all your fault that I can't live a life of luxury anymore. You kicked us out. Her words made the emotions I had been suppressing deep inside churn. That's because you brought it upon yourselves. I tried to maintain my composure as I said it, but those words seemed to further fuel Maggie's anger. Oh, don't play innocent. This isn't over yet. Mom and I haven't been ruined because of you. She screamed, stomping her feet violently as she left. After that, Maggie started to come to our house almost every day. She would ring the doorbell incessantly and yell at the top of her lungs in front of the entrance. Don't think this is the end of it. Mom and I have been ruined because of you. Each time I took a deep breath and considered calling the police. When I went to the police station to explain the situation, the officer said, I'm sorry, but without concrete harm, we can't take action at this time. His words made me feel like all hope was lost. If this continues, something might happen again. I desperately pleaded with him, but the harsh reality was that there was nothing they could do at the moment. On my way home, the cold wind stung my cheeks. Maggie's words and the police officer's response echoed in my mind, and anxiety swelled in my chest. And then the worst possible situation unfolded. One day, Brian and I had to leave the house for an errand. In the evening, when we arrived at the entrance, we saw an unusual sight. The keyhole was bent unnaturally, and the edge of the door had marks that looked like it had been pried open with a tool. What is this? My lips trembled, and I couldn't speak properly. Brian pushed the door open, and we saw the living room. It was far from our usual peaceful scene. The sofa cushions were thrown on the floor, and the contents of the shelves were scattered. It's been ransacked. My heart pounded, and fear ran through my entire body. Wait a minute, my workroom. I ran past the living room and flung open the door to my workroom. But what I saw there was even more devastating. The desk was empty. My work computer, which had always supported my important projects, was gone without a trace. No way. I felt my strength leave me and I collapsed on the spot. It can't be. Why? I questioned over and over in my mind, but there was no answer. From behind, Brian rushed over and said in a trembling voice, Irene, calm down. I'll call the police, he said, and I, with trembling fingers, dialed 911 on my phone. The operator on the other end of the line was calm. Please tell me the details of the damage. I'll dispatch a patrol car immediately. While Brian explained the situation to the police, I just stared blankly around the room. Files containing important documents were scattered, and my notebook was torn. All my work. It's all gone. My eyes blurred. The police arrived and an investigation began. While they collected fingerprints and assessed the situation, I just sat there dazed. Brian explained the details to the officers, summarizing the situation, but his voice seemed distant. Why would someone do this to me? What did I do wrong? That night after the police left, my phone rang. The caller ID showed the name of my company's contact person. Miss Irene, this is an emergency communication. The words made my chest tighten. Due to the possibility of an information leak, we will temporarily suspend your work. His calm, measured voice felt like a knife piercing my heart. In the worst-case scenario, we are considering disciplinary action, including termination. Hearing those words, the tears I had been holding back overflowed. Termination? My voice trembled, and I felt like reality was fading away. Brian put his hand on my shoulder and tried to encourage me. It'll be okay, Irene. We'll figure it out. Everyone knows how hard you've been working. His words were kind, but they couldn't change the reality before me. It's not okay. My voice trembled, almost choking me. My work, my life, it's all being destroyed. Brian silently embraced me and gently stroked my back. My work, which had been everything to me, was crumbling before my eyes. Amidst the crushing feeling of despair, only one thought surfaced in my mind. I won't forgive her. I absolutely won't forgive her. It was a strong, unwavering determination. The next morning, following the police's advice, we checked the security camera footage. Brian pressed the play button and the dimly lit screen showed the area around our front door. The camera captured the crucial moment. A figure in a thick hoodie, pulled low over their face, was tampering with a lock. The movements were clearly practiced, and in less than a few minutes, the lock was broken and the door was pushed open. This is... Brian muttered in shock. The figure threw their tools aside and entered the living room. The next scene showed the middle of the living room where the figure looked around and grinned. The figure's eyes were cold, and perhaps unaware of the camera's presence, they seemed completely relaxed. It's Maggie, Brian said, stunned. The figure in the video then headed straight for the workroom without hesitation. The camera captured the entire sequence of events. Once inside the workroom, Maggie grabbed the computer from the desk, looked at it with a satisfied expression, and then grinned. The smile was eerie and sent a shiver down my spine. What a horrible thing to do. My hands trembled beside Brian. Maggie, holding the computer casually, walked through the living room and disappeared out the front door. It was as if nothing had happened. She even seemed to be at ease. I was captivated by the figure on the screen, rooted to the spot, and speechless. Why would she go this far? The moment Maggie smiled, the image was burned into my mind, sending chills down my spine. Brian was frozen in place as well. Let's take this to the police. His voice was strained, but his words were filled with determination. I won't forgive someone who does something like this. I muttered, my voice trembling, feeling anger toward Maggie welling up from the depths of my heart. We decided to confront Maggie directly. With Brian, I visited Maggie's apartment and pressed the intercom button. What do you want? Maggie opened the door and looked at us with open annoyance. Brian asked in a low voice, Did you break into our house and steal the computer? Maggie's eyebrows furrowed for a moment when she heard his words, but she immediately burst into laughter. Yeah, I did. So what? Her attitude showed no sign of remorse. Why did you do that? When I pressed her, Maggie grinned and said, Serves you right. Now you can't just sit around at home and work, can you? I was at a loss for words. Maggie's eyes showed no remorse, only the light of someone who enjoyed hurting me. You have to go out and work now, don't you? It's hilarious. Her taunts pierced my ears. At that moment, something inside me snapped. The anger I had been suppressing deep within me finally reached its boiling point. Why? Why do you do things like this? My voice trembled as I asked. Maggie answered coldly. Because you're not grateful enough, even though you're family. Hearing those words, I clenched my fist. I wouldn't let her get away with this anymore. I went to the police station with Brian that same day. When I showed the security camera footage to the officer, his expression changed. This is solid evidence. With this, we can pursue her. His words finally gave me a sense of relief. Please use this video to hold her accountable. I can't forgive what she did. As I tearfully pleaded, Brian nodded beside me, supporting me. The police finally took action and my company was understanding. Thanks to the video, it looks like things will be resolved. The contact person told me when he called, and I felt the weight lift from my shoulders. A few days after submitting the security camera footage to the police, Maggie's arrest was officially decided. We finally come this far. Hearing that news, I felt the anxiety that had been building up inside me gradually dissipate. According to the police, when confronted with the security camera footage during questioning, Maggie finally confessed to everything. I did it. I'm sorry. I won't do it again. But her apology came too late. The news of Maggie's arrest also reached Kathy, and her daily life at the nursing home changed completely. The other residents started whispering about her, calling her the mother of that abuser, and no one would go near Kathy. Hearing about this, I didn't feel pain in my heart. Instead, I was convinced that my choice had been the right one. Meanwhile, my work was miraculously unharmed. Thanks to cloud backups, the data was restored and the company responded quickly. I was able to return to work and gradually regain my daily routine. Amidst the busyness, there was a certain peace in my heart. Brian also underwent a noticeable change. Freed from his mother's control, he started to show a softer side, a side I had never seen before. Every time he came home, he would smile at me, and that alone warmed my heart. Irene, I tried making this today. One day, he proudly showed me the dish he had made in the kitchen. Wow, that's amazing. Thank you. It looks delicious. When I said that, he laughed. Looking a little embarrassed, he gradually started to express his opinions, and his role in housework and daily life naturally increased. Let's support each other from now on. I nodded deeply at his words, and then we finally made plans for our spa trip. We'll soak in the spas, eat delicious food, and just relax. I couldn't help but smile at my husband's suggestion. We began to take steps toward a new life filled with anticipation. On the day of our spa trip, we were in an open-air bath surrounded by steam, our shoulders close together. Just being with you like this is enough to make me happy. I smiled from the bottom of my heart at my husband's words. The time we spent reaffirming our feelings for each other seemed to make us forget all the hardships we had been through. Let's make lots of memories together from now on. I nodded strongly at my husband's words. Yes, let's build a wonderful future together. On the other hand, Kathy and Maggie's lives had fallen apart, losing their former splendor. Kathy spent her days alone and lonely in a nursing home. In the nursing home's dining room, Kathy sat alone, gazing out the window with a forlorn expression. The laughter of other residents echoed around her, but no one came near Kathy's table. Maybe I was wrong. Her murmur was swallowed by the void, reaching no one's ears. Other residents whispered about her, calling her the mother of that abuser and keeping their distance. Her meals became tasteless, her hair turned increasingly gray, her back hunched, and she rapidly aged. Maggie, too, faced further hardship. She spent her days in a cramped one-room apartment, scrimping and saving on living expenses. She had sold all her designer clothes and now huddled in a blanket in her cold room. I want to go back to that luxurious life. She was sued by the company for obstruction of business and by me for defamation. She feared facing a prison sentence and wanted to settle out of court, but she had no means to pay the $50,000 in damages. She ended up borrowing money from loan sharks at exorbitant interest rates. To pay back the debt, she started working a dangerous job, spending her days trembling under the watchful eyes of her supervisors. Her once prized designer clothes were replaced with tattered garments as she wandered the streets at night. After our spa trip, we embarked on a new life. There was nothing to fear, nothing to stand in our way. The quiet living room was filled with a warmth I had never felt before. Brian, this is our new beginning. Holding my husband's hand, I nodded from the bottom of my heart. That's right. Let's walk towards a wonderful future together. Just the two of us. Time free from being disturbed by anyone. We could live peacefully without fear of Kathy's or Maggie's shadows and cherish each other while looking forward to a hopeful future. Our story, our new chapter begins now.